never expected much from my family. That's just how I survived. You lower the bar enough times and eventually you stop looking up at all. So when I walked into my parents' house in Glendale, Arizona that Saturday afternoon and saw the streamers, actual streamers draped across the walls, silver and navy blue with a massive Congrats Carter banner hanging across the mantel, I felt something unfamiliar stir in my chest. Hope. There were trays of catered food, not just grocery store pizzas in grease-stained boxes, but real dishes buffet style like they'd planned this. A few of my dad's co-workers were there sipping drinks. Neighbors mingled in the kitchen. My mom was hugging people, smiling, laughing like she meant it. Even Uncle Roy, who usually only appeared at weddings and funerals, was standing by the snack table chatting with my high school chemistry teacher. I stood in the entryway, stunned, barely hearing the music playing softly in the background. None of this had ever happened for me. Not when I made honor roll every year. Not when I got accepted to Northern Arizona University. Not when I won the regional debate championship. For my older brother, Drew Scher. When he got into college, they threw a full backyard bash complete with a DJ and a rented photo booth. When he flunked out a year later, they told everyone it was just a gap year. But for me, nothing. And yet here this was, a graduation party, my graduation party. My mom beamed when she saw me rushing over to pull me into a tight hug. Her perfume smelled like oranges and nostalgia. "We are so proud of you, sweetheart," she said, her voice warm, maternal in a way I hadn't heard in years. "You're the first college grad in the family." I blinked, unsure how to respond. Was this real? Then my dad clapped me on the back with enough force to rock me forward slightly. 4 years, huh? And summa cum laude. Look at you, Carter. Who knew you had it in you? I laughed, actually laughed, and I let myself believe it just for a moment, that maybe this time was different. Maybe I wasn't invisible. Maybe they finally saw me. I caught a glimpse of Drew in the corner, leaning against the staircase, thumbs moving across his phone screen. He barely looked up. Typical, but I didn't care. Not today. Today the spotlight was mine. Someone handed me a sparkling cider. Glasses were raised. A few people clinked cups and said my name. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had arrived, like I belonged. And then they brought out the cake. It was huge, frosted in crisp white with silver accents set neatly in a custom bakery box. My mom carried it in like it was a newborn. My dad trailed behind her grinning. "Come on, son," he said, nudging me toward the table. "Take a look." I stepped forward, still basking in the glow of being seen, and read the words piped in blue. "Congratulations, failure." The room froze, at least in my mind it did. It didn't compute at first. Surely I was misreading it. Or maybe the decorator had messed up. It couldn't be what it looked like. Then the first laugh came. My dad, he chuckled. Not a quiet, awkward laugh, but a full-belly one like he had just heard the best joke of the night. My mom tried to stifle hers behind a napkin like it wasn't that bad. And Drew, he was bent over now, nearly wheezing with glee. "Oh, come on," my dad said between laughs. "It's a joke." Drew gasped, "Seriously, Carter. Lighten up, it's funny." Something inside me shattered. I didn't shout, didn't flip the table, didn't cry. I just stared at the cake, then at them, then at the crowd of people suddenly averting their eyes, murmuring into their cups. Some looked confused. A few seemed mildly horrified, but none of them said a word. No one stepped in. No one asked if I was okay. I was the butt of the joke, and they were all in on it. And in that moment, standing next to the punch bowl with fake celebration streamers fluttering behind me, I realized something vital. They hadn't changed. They never would. The first time I realized I didn't matter as much as my brother, I was 6 years old. I had just won my first spelling bee at Highland Elementary. My certificate had glitter on the edges and my name printed in bold letters. I was practically levitating on the way home, so excited to show my parents. I ran through the door, paper in hand, waiting for them to cheer. That same afternoon, Drew had scribbled a half-coherent drawing of a rocket ship that looked more like a sausage on fire. My mom gasped when she saw it. "Look at this. Our little artist." She kissed the top of his head and taped the drawing onto the fridge like it was a Picasso. My dad chuckled, ruffled Drew's hair, and said, "You've got real talent, bud." When I held out my certificate, my dad barely looked at it. "Spelling, that's not a real skill." My mom gave me a distracted smile. "That's nice, Carter, but don't brag, okay?" I wasn't bragging, I just wanted to be seen. By the time I was 10, I had stopped trying. Drew broke a window. It was an accident. Drew got sent to the principal's office. The teacher was too uptight. Drew flunked a quiz. Not everyone's a nerd like Carter. But me, if I rolled my eyes, I was disrespectful. If I asked for new shoes, I was ungrateful. When Drew got into Prescott State, they threw a backyard luau complete with a tiki bar and a karaoke machine. When I got into NAU with a scholarship, my dad didn't even look up from his phone. "It's in state," he said, "not a big deal." I told myself I didn't care, that I was doing it for me, that I didn't need their validation. But part of me, a small, stubborn, still hopeful part, did care. I hoped that if I just kept my head down, if I just worked harder, if I stayed clean and achieved quietly, maybe one day they'd look at me the way they looked at Drew. College was my escape hatch. I never asked them for money. I knew better. I got a partial scholarship, took out federal loans, and worked weekends at a bookstore cafe to cover rent and groceries. Meanwhile, Drew barely graduated high school. He barely did anything, really. He scraped into a second-rate community college in Tucson, and my parents treated it like he'd been accepted into Stanford. "We'll help with whatever you need," my mom had said, eyes full of pride. And they did. They paid his tuition, got him a used car, sent him weekly care packages. My dad even gave him his old laptop after I'd been using a beat-up tablet for 3 years. Drew partied through freshman year like it was one long tailgate. He missed classes, failed 2 courses, got caught with a fake ID. By the end of sophomore year, he'd officially flunked out. They didn't yell, they didn't punish him, they mourned. "He's under a lot of pressure," my mom whispered. "Maybe we pushed him too hard." They didn't push him, they carried him. And the real kick in the teeth, they started planning his comeback. They called advisors, contacted admissions offices at other colleges. They lined up a second chance complete with new dorm housing and another tuition check. Then they told me I'd be co-signing his lease, as if that was the most natural thing in the world. "You've got great credit," my dad said. "It won't cost you anything, just sign the papers." I should have said no. I should have told them to shove it. But I didn't. I was too used to saying yes, too used to being the responsible one, too used to being the one they relied on when Drew fell short. So I signed, like I always did, like they expected me to. They barely thanked me. Drew didn't even look up from his phone. And that was the moment something in me clicked. It wasn't that they didn't see me, it was that they didn't care. I could have won a Pulitzer cured cancer and published a best-selling memoir, and my mom would have smiled and asked me to take out the trash. They were never going to respect me. Not really. Not as long as I kept playing the role they'd written for me. I didn't say anything then, but I made a note. And when I walked into that living room weeks later, saw the banners, the decorations, my mom's warm eyes, my dad's handshake, I almost let myself believe they had rewritten the script. Almost. But when they wheeled out that cake, when I saw the word failure piped in blue icing like a punchline, I knew. They'd never see me, and they never would. The laughter didn't stop. My dad clapped Drew on the back like they'd just pulled off the ultimate prank. My mom giggled behind a glass of wine, her free hand waving at the cake like it's not that serious. And Drew, he was doubled over, practically wheezing with joy. "Oh my God, Carter," he gasped. "The look on your face, man, priceless." A joke, that's what I was to them, a punchline. I looked around the room. Some of the guests were shifting awkwardly. One of my mom's coworkers raised her eyebrows and glanced away. A neighbor whispered something to her husband and shook her head, but no one said anything. No one stood up for me. No one even tried. The air felt thick. My throat closed not with tears but with clarity. I had been fooled again. I wasn't angry. Not in the explosive table-flipping way they might have expected. I wasn't even sad. I had been sad too many times before. This was something else, something sharp, cold, rigid as glass. As I picked up my glass of sparkling cider and stood tall. The room slowly quieted, conversations trailing off one by one like candles being snuffed out. Even Drew looked up, his laughter tapering into a grin of confusion. I raised my glass. "To my family," I said, voice smooth, unwavering. My mom blinked. My dad's smile froze. "For always being exactly who I thought you were." A few people let out surprised exhales. My aunt shifted in her seat. I gestured toward the decorations, the fake cheer, the cake still sitting on the table, like a monument to their disrespect. To this party I continued, so much effort, so much planning, I'll never forget it. The silence grew heavy, dense with discomfort. "And to the future," I said, lifting my glass just slightly higher, "because I've finally learned exactly how to treat you the way you've always treated me." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. My dad's expression shifted into something unfamiliar, uncertain. My mom's lips parted, but she didn't speak. Drew looked like he was trying to figure out if this was still part of the joke or not. It wasn't. I downed my drink in one long sip, set the glass carefully on the table, and turned toward the front door. I picked up my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and began to walk. No rush, no drama. Before I stepped out, I looked back once, letting my eyes scan the room. Drew was watching me now, the smirk fading from his mouth. My dad cleared his throat. "Carter, don't be dramatic. It's just I stopped him with a smile. "Oh, and one more thing," I said. "But don't worry, you'll figure it out soon enough." Then I walked out. No yelling, no tears, just silence. Thick, suffocating silence that wrapped itself around their living room like fog. I didn't have to look back to know they were scrambling to rewrite what just happened. They were probably whispering that I was just being sensitive, that I'd get over it, that I'd call back, that I always did. They had no idea what I had already done or what I was about to do. Because that party wasn't just a slap in the face. It was the final note in a song I'd been forced to sing my entire life. And now I was done performing. The moment I closed the front door behind me, something inside me locked into place. Not rage, not heartbreak, something colder, quieter, and infinitely more dangerous: resolve. I got into my car, set my bag on the passenger seat, and sat there in the quiet for a long minute. The house behind me was still buzzing with music, fake laughter, and the clink of glasses, but it didn't matter anymore. I opened my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and tapped the number I'd saved weeks ago, Mr. Bowers, Canyon Ridge Apartments. It rang twice. Canyon Ridge Leasing Office, a cheery voice answered. Hi, I said, keeping my voice steady. This is Carter Ellis. I'm listed as a co-signer on Unit 4C. I'd like to remove myself from that lease. There was a pause. Are you sure that would change the status of the contract? I'm sure, I said. What do you need from me to make it official? By the end of that call, it was done. Just like that, Drew's lease was hanging by a thread. His second chance, the one they'd constructed so carefully, on the assumption that I would always fall in line, had just lost its foundation. I didn't smile. Not yet. But I felt a strange stillness settle over me, like someone had finally turned off the background noise that had been buzzing in my life since childhood. They thought I'd never push back. They thought I was still obedient, still desperate for their approval. They were wrong. I didn't post about it, didn't send a dramatic message. I simply went home to my apartment, microwaved leftover mac and cheese, and watched a rerun of a cooking show while filing away the official lease termination email in a folder titled, Finally Free. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I knew they hadn't found out yet. Because when they did, I expected the storm to hit like a thunderclap. But until then, I enjoyed the calm. I went to work, I clocked out early, I read in the park, I turned off my phone for hours just because I could. It was the first time in years I wasn't on call for their chaos. No panicked texts from my mom asking for help. No guilt-laced reminders from my dad. No demands from Drew sent at 1 a.m. with zero punctuation and even less courtesy. Just silence. And then on the morning of the 7th day, the messages started. First came my mom's voicemail. Hi, honey, I think something weird is happening with Drew's lease. Can you give me a call? Then another. Sweetheart, the landlord said you're not on the contract anymore. Is that true? Did something happen? Then came my dad's voice, rough, clipped, already simmering. Carter, call me back. What the hell did you do? By day 10, Drew finally texted. Dude, WTF, you need to fix this now. I didn't respond. I went out for sushi with my friend Mia. We split a bottle of sake and laughed until our ribs hurt about nothing in particular. I didn't mention the party, or the fallout, or the phone lighting up in my jacket pocket like a ticking bomb. That night, I opened a new note on my phone and typed the words. They didn't lose me, they threw me away. I just finally stopped crawling back. By day 12, my dad tried a different tone. You made a commitment. You need to fix this. By day 15, I received an email from the landlord confirming Drew had 3 weeks to either find a new co-signer or vacate the unit. I bookmarked it. On day 22, my phone rang again. My dad. I let it ring twice before answering. He didn't waste time. What the hell is wrong with you? I said nothing. You gave your word. Your brother's lease is about to fall through. You need to fix this now. Still nothing. He ranted, shouted, called me names he hadn't used since I was a teenager, slamming doors. And when he finally ran out of steam, I spoke. I don't think I will. Silence. What did you just say? I repeated it, calm and certain. I don't think I will. Another silence, this one longer, heavier. Then venomous. You selfish little. I hung up. He called back. I let it ring. Then Drew. Ignored. Then my mom. And this time I picked up because I already knew how this conversation would go. She sniffled as soon as I answered. We need to talk. I hummed, "Do we?" She ignored the edge in my voice. "Carter, we all know that party didn't go the way you wanted." I almost laughed. I didn't want an apology anymore. I wanted consequences. I didn't answer any more calls after that. I didn't need to. I already knew what was happening and I wanted them to sit in it. The messages multiplied. My mom left voicemails one after another, ranging from gentle concern to barely restrained hysteria. My dad shifted from threats to silence. Drew, he skipped both and went straight to rage. "You're ruining my life. Fix it now." I let them all sit unread, unacknowledged. I turned on read receipts just for the satisfaction of watching the checkmarks go blue and knowing I saw, and still didn't care. The first 2 weeks passed like that. My apartment became an oasis. I'd sit on my couch in peace sipping coffee with no interruptions while they drowned in the vacuum I used to fill. And then it escalated. Friday evening, I was halfway through a rewatch of a baking competition show when my phone lit up again. Jake. 5 calls in a row. On the 6th, I finally answered. "Thought we were done here," I said casually. His voice came through sharp, laced with panic. "What the hell did you do?" I leaned back into my couch. "You'll need to be more specific." The tuition money, he practically shouted. "It's gone. It never showed up." There it was. I smiled. "You mean the part where I was supposed to pitch in for your second shot at school?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Weird. It's like I never agreed to that. You said you'd help." "No," I corrected calmly. "You assumed I would. Big difference." He sputtered on the other end. "Mom and Dad said." "Oh, I'm sure they did," I said. "But I don't take orders from them anymore." He tried a different tone. "This is my last chance, Carter. I need this." I sighed. "Yeah, I know." Silence. Then I added, "You'll figure something out." That exact phrase, my dad had said it to me years ago, right after he drained my college savings to cover Drew's car repairs. When I asked what I was supposed to do about tuition, he shrugged and said, "You'll figure it out." Now it was their turn. Drew's voice cracked. "You're punishing me." "No," I said. "I'm finally treating you the way you've always treated me." Then I hung up. The next call came from my mom. She was crying before I even answered. "Sweetheart," she choked out, "we need to talk." I didn't say anything. "Jake's about to lose his spot at school. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. She took a shaky breath. "You're punishing all of us over a stupid joke." I smiled. "No, Mom, I'm just done financing people who don't respect me." "But we're family." "You only say that when you need something." She paused. "You don't mean that." I let the silence stretch until it hurt. Then I said, "I don't owe you anything, not anymore." And I hung up. They didn't call for 2 days after that. I imagined them sitting around the kitchen table, whispering, trying to craft a new strategy. My dad probably barked about how ungrateful I was. My mom likely cried playing the role of wounded matriarch. And Drew probably pouted like a child being told he couldn't go to recess. But I didn't think about them much, because I had finally cleared space in my life where they used to live. And in that space, I found something better. Peace. No more late-night emergencies. No more surprise rent payments. No more emotional manipulation buried beneath phrases like, "We're just worried about you, and that's what family does." I stopped being their safety net. And in doing so, I stopped being their scapegoat. They never thanked me for the years I held them up. But now that I was gone, they felt every inch of my absence. Drew's lease was gone, his tuition unpaid, his second chance shattered. Because for the first time in his life, there was no backup plan. And for the first time in mine, I didn't feel guilty about it. 3 days of silence passed. It was the kind of silence that felt like pressure in your chest, waiting to snap, to shift, to break. And then it did. The next call came at 8:12 a.m. sharp, Saturday morning. I was still in bed, half covered in my duvet, scrolling through emails, when the screen lit up Dad. Mobile. I let it ring twice, then I picked up. Carter, he said, his voice clipped and already halfway to boiling. You need to explain yourself. I said nothing. You gave your word. You told your brother you'd help. His lease is gone, his tuition is blocked. What the hell do you think you're doing? I took a breath, slow and deep, holding people accountable. This isn't how you were raised. I almost laughed. Actually, it's exactly how I was raised. When I needed help, you told me to figure it out. When I asked for support, you said you were tapped out. That was different. No, I said, it wasn't. He tried another tactic. You need to be a man and take responsibility. That one stung, not because it was true, but because it was so predictable. Where was that speech when Drew flunked out, when he blew through every opportunity you handed him? He was quiet. I pressed on. You want me to take responsibility for a mess I didn't create, for a life I didn't derail. Your brother is not my responsibility. You're being selfish. No, I said, I'm being done. And I hung up. He called back. I didn't answer. An hour later, Drew tried, then Mom, again. By midday, I gave in, not out of guilt, but because I already knew how it would go. Mom's voice was soft, tired. Sweetheart, she said, we're worried about you. Are you? I replied, sipping coffee on my patio. Or are you just worried about losing the bank account you didn't realize I'd become? Her breath caught. That's not fair. Neither is raising one son and tolerating the other. It was a joke, she said, suddenly desperation seeping in. The cake. It was meant to be funny. It wasn't. It wasn't meant to hurt you. But it did, I said, and you laughed anyway. Silence. Then the truth I knew was coming. We need you. I nodded to myself. You always did, but you never respected me. Carter, please. I cut her off. You raised me to give without limits, and I did. You just never expected I'd stop. The line was quiet. I could hear her breathing shallow and stunned. Then came the whisper, so this is it, you're cutting us off over one bad moment. No, I said, I'm cutting you off for a lifetime of using me. That cake was just the headline. Another call came in, Drew again. I didn't take it. But I knew I'd hear from him eventually. And I did that night. He didn't yell this time, he begged. Look, he said, his voice raw. You made your point. You win, okay, but you can't just let me fail. Why not, I asked. Because I'm your brother. You're the one who laughed the hardest, Drew. He fell silent. I used to want what you had, I continued. The praise, the parties, the free passes. But now I'm glad I never got it. You're punishing me for things I didn't even control. You didn't control them, I agreed, but you benefited from them. You mocked me while standing on a platform I helped build. You said you'd help. No, I said firmly, I never said that. You and Mom and Dad assumed I would. You counted on me to be so desperate to belong I'd sell myself out. This is my last chance. You've said that before. This time it's real. Good, I replied. Then maybe it'll finally teach you something. He paused. Please, Carter. I let that word hang in the air. Just once I wanted to hear it. Not as manipulation, not as guilt, but as recognition. You don't need my money, Drew, I said. You need accountability. Then I ended the call. I stood in my kitchen for a long time, staring out the window at the quiet street below, sunlight spilling onto the hardwood. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to be alone. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying anyone else's weight. 3 days. That's how long it took for the tone to shift from panic to desperation, from entitlement to begging. But I didn't flinch. I'd spent years being the one who answered every call, who filled every gap, who picked up the pieces before they even hit the floor. I used to think that made me responsible. Now I realized it had made me a tool one they assumed would always be within reach. Not anymore. I was at the grocery store browsing cereal like it was the most important decision of my life when the final call came in. Drew. Again. 5 missed calls in a row, then finally I answered. He didn't say hello. "What the hell did you do?" he barked. I popped a box of honey bunches into my cart, still not specific enough. The money, Carter, the tuition deposit, it never cleared. Financial aid says it was never paid. "Correct," I said. "Where is it?" "Not coming from me." "You were supposed to help." "No," I said. "You assumed I would." Again. He sputtered. "But you've been helping. You've covered things before." He was right too, right. I had. Quietly, consistently, automatically. Gas bills when the power got shut off. Rent when my parents missed a month. Surprise repairs on mom's car. Food deliveries when they didn't say thank you. It had started so small I barely noticed it. A safety net I didn't know I was weaving until I cut it loose. "I didn't realize how much I was supporting all of you," I said, until I stopped. "But this is different," Drew snapped. "I'm about to lose my spot." I leaned on my cart and looked out the store window, watching a woman walk her dog across the parking lot, completely unaware that on the other side of my call, a family was unraveling. "That sounds hard," I said flat. "You're doing this to punish me." "No, I'm doing this because I finally figured out how to treat you the way you treated me." His voice dropped. "You said family mattered." "You said that, not me, only when it's convenient." He didn't know what to say, so I ended the call. The next day, my mom called, crying, real tears this time, the kind that sounded wet and slow and genuine. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "we can't come up with the deposit. We don't have enough. We're going to lose the apartment too. Everything's slipping." I didn't say anything. "Ryan." She still called me that even now, like a name could pull me back. "You're punishing all of us," she said, "even your father." "I'm not punishing anyone," I replied. "I'm just absent." "That's worse," she said. "You used to care." "I did, and you used that." She paused, then her voice cracked. "You have to forgive us." There it was, finally. But I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt calm. Because forgiveness isn't something you owe. It's something you give freely when someone has truly earned it. "You keep saying us," I said, but none of you stood up for me. Not at the party, not when I was drowning in student loans, not when you drained my time, my money, my energy, because Drew needed another chance. "But he's your brother." "And I'm your son," I said. That didn't seem to matter. She was quiet, then softly with a kind of sad wonder. "We didn't realize?" "You never wanted to realize," I corrected. "It was easier when I didn't ask for anything." "You've always been the strong one," she said, a line I'd heard my whole life. "No," I said, "I've been the silent one, not the same thing." She sniffled again. "Please don't do this." I exhaled slowly. "Mom, you're not being cut off, you're just being let go." Click. After that, I didn't answer again. The texts kept coming, promises, excuses, blame disguised as concern. I let them stack up like unopened bills, reminders of a debt I no longer owed. Drew lost his enrollment, missed the payment deadline, got dropped from the roster. No backup plan, no last-minute save. My parents couldn't pull enough together to help. They'd already spent what little they had trying to keep up appearances, and now the charade was over. I heard through a cousin that Drew moved back in with them. Back to the same house, the same room, the same broken expectations. A full-grown man without a degree, without direction, stuck in the same cycle I'd spent years trying to break free from. Poetic, really. The golden boy homebound. And me, I slept better than I had in years. It was a Tuesday when I woke up and realized no one needed me. And for the first time, it didn't feel like failure. It felt like freedom. The phone didn't ring. No one texted asking for help, no last-minute emergencies, no guilt-laced messages disguised as affection. Just silence. And it was beautiful. I made coffee in a quiet kitchen, no toddler running underfoot, no brother knocking on my door asking for rides or money. Just the soft sound of the percolator and sunlight pouring through the window of my own apartment paid in full. No shared leases, no strings. I had started a new job 2 weeks earlier, something small but stable, working as a youth coordinator for a local nonprofit in Seattle. It wasn't flashy and no one bragged about it at dinner parties, but every day I got to help real kids with real problems, and no one laughed at me or handed me a cake with loser scrawled across it in blue icing. I no longer walked around with the weight of being less than hanging on my shoulders like wet clothes. Now I wore pride like armor, quiet, soft-earned. I started taking care of myself in ways I never had before. I joined a gym not to impress anyone, but to reclaim the strength I had always been told wasn't necessary. I bought a bookshelf and filled it with stories I never had time to read. I planted herbs on the balcony just because I liked the smell of fresh basil. I even adopted a dog, a rescue mutt named Miso, who barked at the mailman and drooled on my socks, but loved me with the kind of pure loyalty I never got from blood. One night as I walked Miso around Green Lake, I spotted a family across the path. A boy, maybe 6 or 7, rode his bike while his parents jogged behind laughing. I didn't feel envy, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. That was the life I would build, not the one I was born into, but the one I'd earned stitch by stitch, decision by decision. A family by choice, not obligation. Later that week, a letter came in the mail. Not a bill, not a desperate plea, a handwritten envelope with my name in neat script. From Aunt Lorraine, the only member of my extended family who ever really saw me. Inside was a card with a photo of me at age 9, grinning with a mouthful of braces and a Young Writers Award ribbon pinned to my t-shirt. I found this cleaning out the garage, she wrote. Just a reminder you were always worth celebrating. Some of us just forgot how. I stared at that photo for a long time. I didn't cry, I smiled. Because someone had remembered, someone had kept proof. That weekend, I decided to stop hiding. I posted a message on my social media. Sometimes family means letting go of the people who raised you so you can finally raise yourself. I'm not angry, I'm just free. And that feels better than being loved for someone I'm not. I didn't tag anyone, I didn't need to. The message was for me. But people responded, old classmates, coworkers, even a few distant cousins. They sent messages private and public. I relate to this so much. You're so brave. I wish I had your strength. That wasn't what I was aiming for. I didn't feel brave, I just felt done. A few days later, Drew tried again. This time it wasn't a call, it was a DM. I get it now, you did what you had to. Still sucks though. Guess I didn't realize how much you were holding everything together. It was the closest thing to an apology he'd ever given me. I didn't reply, but I didn't block him either. Some doors you don't slam shut, you just let them stay closed. At the nonprofit, I was asked to lead a mentorship workshop for teens who'd aged out of foster care. They wanted someone who understood what it meant to be alone and still build something from the ground up. I said yes. I told them my story, not all the ugly details, but the truth behind the truth. About choosing yourself even when it means walking away. About how love without respect isn't love, it's leverage. And how you can unlearn that. You can. Afterward, one kid, Deshaun, came up and said, "Man, that hit hard. You make me feel like maybe I can say no too." I smiled. You can. Saying no is how you make space for your real yes. That night, I walked home with Miso trotting beside me and realized I wasn't carrying anyone else's expectations anymore. Just my own. And that was enough. 3 months passed. Not a single call from my parents, not one message from Drew, no birthday card, no holiday guilt trip, no "we miss you" platitudes. Just silence. And I didn't mourn it. The absence wasn't empty, it was healing. I was busy now. My days were filled with art supplies, group meetings, and grant proposals. My nights were spent walking Miso under the city lights, listening to playlists that no longer had to drown out anger. I had started journaling again, something I hadn't done since high school. My first entry had only 3 words. I chose peace. It became my mantra. The nonprofit grew faster than I expected. Within weeks, I was offered a full-time position to lead youth development initiatives across King County. I said yes without hesitation. For the first time, I was building something that mattered and not for someone else's validation. It was my voice, my vision, my path, and it felt right. One day after work, I returned home to find a package at my door. No return address, just a simple brown box with my name on it. Inside was a cake. Chocolate ganache professionally decorated. The words piped in white frosting read, "You were never the loser." I stared at it for a long moment, heart-still hands trembling slightly. Taped to the side was a card, in Drew's handwriting. "From the bakery, Mom didn't call. I should have said this years ago. I'm sorry, I see it now. No groveling, no begging. Just truth." It wasn't enough to erase everything, but it was something. An acknowledgement, a sign of growth, and maybe, just maybe, a start. I didn't reply right away. I wasn't ready. Forgiveness isn't an instant transaction, it's a process, and I needed time. But I did cut a slice of cake that night and sat on my balcony with Miso watching the city glow beneath the stars. I was no longer defined by that joke of a party, by a toxic family hierarchy, or by the weight of unspoken disappointment. I had rewritten the script. I had become the man they always said I wasn't strong enough to be. Not in rebellion, but in release. A week later, I received a message from my cousin Maya, the only other person in our family who ever lived life on her terms. "Heard what you did. Proud of you. Let me know if you ever want to collaborate. My art center needs someone like you." That night, I stayed up late sketching out a pilot program, storytelling through puppetry, painting, and play for kids affected by trauma. I sent it over. She called me the next day, giddy. "We're funding it." And just like that, my pain became purpose. I held a launch event 3 weeks later. Over 60 kids and families showed up. One little girl with curly hair and anxious eyes clutched my hand after the puppet show and whispered, "I wish you were my big brother." I knelt beside her and smiled. "You don't need a big brother to be brave. You already are." That moment, her tiny fingers gripping mine, meant more than any cake, any party, any parental approval ever could. It was real. Later that evening, I walked home through Ballard's quiet streets thinking about how different my life looked now. Not successful in the way my parents defined it, but successful in every way that mattered. I didn't own a house, I didn't drive a luxury car, but I woke up every day excited, not exhausted. I had boundaries that held. I had relationships built on respect. And most of all, I had peace. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of alignment. I paused at a bookstore window, saw a quote in the display. Sometimes you have to leave the table when respect is no longer being served. Yeah, that was it. That was what I'd done. The final message came 2 weeks later, a simple email from my mother. Subject checking in. We heard about your program. It sounds nice. I hope you're well. We're here if you ever want to talk. Love, Mom and Dad. No apology, no recognition of the damage. Just the same vague door left ajar, hoping I'd forget why I closed it. I didn't reply. Instead, I archived it. Because some stories don't need sequels. They need closure. And I had mine.